they come, the thing. The thing done, they come, the thing. The thing done, they come, the thing. The thing done, they come, the thing.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Doing Art episode 17. My name is Lawrence Chuno, and this episode is with jazz musician Michael Eaton. Michael is a saxophonist, a composer, and a recording artist. He actually played on my upcoming album, Niger Rhythm Affair. But as you will learn, he is also into social philosophy, which makes this episode fun and yet thought-inspiring. Well, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I present Michael Eaton, all up in your face.
Without problems, you know what I mean? Because like we can all run into problems and like do you bite your lip as a saxophone player or are you know whatever, like there
I have a story about that. I have you know what, let's
start over.
Yeah, to the very beginning.
That's right.
A really great preamble, but let's go to the very beginning.
Okay.
So Michael Eaton, welcome to Doing Art.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
glad to be here.
Yeah, let's go to the beginning. Where are you from?
I am from outside of Kansas City, Missouri, originally.
All right. Why not just tell me where you're from? What?
Why?
Yeah. Why do people do that? Like, the place where you're from might not have a name recognition, but you don't know. You might be the person that's gonna put it on the map.
Okay. Yeah, we're always like, I'm not from anywhere cool, so I'm trying to hide. That's totally it. I'm from Liberty, Missouri, which is outside of Kansas City, Missouri. There are some people that are, I think there's some sports figures that might be from like a baseball player or football player that are from my
I'm gonna
city.
open this window.
And there's also, I'm trying to think, there was a Stephen King televised movie called Sometimes They Come Back or something like that was filmed in Liberty. I mean, I don't know, these are silly claims to fame, but it was a suburb of Kansas City, and Kansas City was basically like 20 minutes away by car.
Yeah.
And so the great thing about growing up there was that there was less of this kind of urban rural divide. I mean, it was there, but like I could go to the city very quickly and conveniently and be there, and then quickly and conveniently leave. And so Liberty is kind of, it's a suburb, but it's kind of, parts of it are in the country. Yeah. So I grew up kind of in that intermediary zone. You know. So
I always have this question. I think it's been answered before, but I keep forgetting like the right answer.
Okay.
Why is there's a Kansas City, Missouri, and then there's a Kansas City, Kansas.
That's
so right. What's up with that?
Well, they're divided by a river. And Kansas City, Kansas is the smaller side, I believe, population-wise. Kansas City, Missouri is the bigger side, kind of where a lot of the urban area, so to speak, is. Yeah. I mean, Maurice Green, I think his name was he was an Olympic runner. For a while, was like the fastest man in the world, quote unquote. Yeah. I was a sprinter, was from Kansas City, Kansas. Okay. But they're basically divided by a river. It would be as if you had a New York, New Jersey, and you had a New York, New York.
Oh, okay. But is it regarded as one city?
It's two cities.
Two different cities.
Two different cities. Yeah. Males. There's KCK and KCMO. Oh. So you always have to just say, I'm from the Missouri side or whatever. Okay. A lot of people assume you're from Kansas because of the name, obviously. Yeah. But the jazz portion of we'll probably, if we talk about jazz, was very much in Kansas City, Missouri, and that's where a young Charlie Parker grew up. That's where Count Basie was back in the 20s and 30s. That's where Lester Young was with Count Basie. That's where there was, for a brief interval, some of the cutting edge jazz of the time was situated, partly because of the political and economic situation in the city in the 30s. It was sort of insulated from the Depression. partly because of the mayor and sort of his nefarious involvement in activities, but they had kind of like a district where there was music 24 hours a day. Wow. And so it's interesting that it's just for me to be from that area where you realize that some really profound American music went down there, and the ghost or the spirit of Charlie Parker still looms large, I think. When I grew up in the 90s, it was during the Young Lions era of jazz, which I call the neoclassical period for reasons I can explain. But that was a time where there were a lot of clubs. There was a renaissance of jazz in Kansas City, partly because of the times and partly because we had a mayor named Emanuel Cleaver, who's still in Congress, who was a big jazz fan, and he wanted to see jazz and the Kansas City roots in jazz highlighted and promoted to the world. So there was an initiative to revitalize certain parts of town that used to be major jazz landmarks, and so that happened when I was a kid or when I was a teenager. And it was a good time to be there. And at the time, Kansas City really emphasized, I think Kansas City Jazz really emphasized its past like achievements as Kansas City Jazz, blues and swing. Yeah. So you have people that play bebop, and you have people that play the blues, and you have people that play swing. And there weren't to me that many players who were going for like a kind of post 1965 or fusion element. There were some, but it was more of a traditional approach, and now it seems like every time I go back, it's a little more open, or at least I meet the people that I didn't know before, who are doing things outside of that, or more contemporary music, as I should just say. Yeah. But Kansas City, for that reason, does have a rich contribution to American music.
When did you start getting interested into jazz? Like I got into it basically junior high, which was grades 8 and 9 for me. I went to a camp, for a summer music camp. I think after gosh, it was the summer of my 7th grade year going into 8th grade. And but wait, let me ask you a question. Did you play music? You played music before then?
I did. I mean, I grew up with like a very vocal friendly household. My mom sang a little bit. She sang to me for a long time, from like the cradle to early childhood. We listened to the radio a lot, and I was in some choirs as our choir too when I was a kid. But I had been playing the saxophone for 2 years. Before then. And I had also in Liberty, they have a great band program that had like an 80 to 100 year tradition of excellence. So like that, I was fortunate. And I've realized this since I moved to New York City, how fortunate I was, because there just happened to be at that time and place a really great faculty, a core faculty of 3 band directors who all had roots in music that I wanted to know about, and that was a very great environment for me to come up in. But I was just like, can I play a song on saxophone? That's all I wanted to do. But I went to this band camp, and I mean, it started out like I was in a jazz band there, and there was also one my band director, who was the director of the jazz band, was an alto sax player, and he played one night at a faculty concert, and I had basically like this religious experience listening to him, and that's I think sometimes that must inform my engagement with the music still, because I really, the word I would describe as ecstatic. I was listening to him, and it was like some door opened up where I was like, I had never thought this was possible. And it was, and I was filled with like this amazing sense of joy. Like it was like, what's going on? And nothing told me like, hey, I want to be able to do that. I was just like, oh, that exists. Cool. And then like, I got into, which is kind of interesting, because it took me a while. And then my junior high band director, I think, noticed that some of us had maybe some ability, or he could start a junior high jazz band. So I got in that. And like my 8th grade year, I played a solo in front of the school, and everybody was like, wow. And so that, one thing led into another. My 9th grade year, I started sitting in with the high school jazz band. And then from there on, I mean, in terms of jazz, I had a really rich upbringing in the sense of we had
foundation.
Yeah, we had a high school jazz band. We had a high school jazz combo. I had my own small group for 2 years.
Oh, nice.
We did regional jazz festivals at like regional colleges.
Yeah.
We did the big band would play and get critiqued. The small group that I was in played and got critiqued. I did all district band and all district jazz band in Kansas City. I did all state band and all state jazz band, and I fell in love with the music. Really, I mean, there was around ninth grade, there was this feeling of like, this is something I really want to do.
Okay, I was gonna ask that, but then my next question is this: when you were playing at that age, at that stage in your life, did you feel like you were playing music, or did you feel like you were playing jazz the way you understand it now?
That is an interesting question.
Did you feel like, okay, I love music and this happened to be the kind of music I'm playing? Or did you feel like, oh, I love this kind of music, this jazz music, and I want to make my contribution, you know?
Yeah.
Because
it's interesting. Yeah. Cause it's interesting, like what terms we think of things in. I don't know if I can answer that. Like, I mean, I was aware of differences in, let's call it style, because that's a hard word, but style, like, because particularly like in classical saxophone versus jazz saxophone, you know, I wanted to keep those things separate.
Did you ever play classical?
I did. In fact, I have a fairly, well, I wouldn't call myself a professional by any means anymore, but I did up until my second year of college pursue classical saxophone.
Okay.
I studied with a great guy, or great name in classical saxophone, Eugene Rousseau. My first year of college. I mean, my sophomore year of college was when I officially made the switch and decided that was what I wanted to do with my life.
But you switched from jazz to classical.
Or no, I switched from classical to jazz.
No. But in high school and in junior high, you played jazz.
I mean, I started out as like just a classical saxophonist.
Okay, in a jazz band.
I mean, I was in wind band. Like there was no jazz band until 8th grade.
Okay.
So I was just like doing what you did, like and then in 8th grade we had like a technique program where we would go in with the woodwind teacher and she would have us play through technique books and I also did classical. I did classical solos and ensembles all throughout. So really, my first 6 to 7 years were very, I don't want to call it balanced, but there were just both aspects were there.
Okay.
In fact, I was more of a classical saxophonist in terms of training.
Okay.
And my teachers, but I did fall in love. I mean, by my 10th grade or 11th grade year, I mean, there was one summer I know that I heard like Sonny Rollins' Saxophone Colossus, and that was a big record, or Giant Steps. Yeah. But also there was one summer, I can't remember exactly when, it was either summer after sophomore year or summer after junior year, where I got into some of the major Blue Note records, like Maiden Voyage and for example, the records that really hit me, that really definitively made me want to go into jazz were Speak No Evil by Wayne Shorter, The Real McCoy by McCoy Tyner, and then probably Now He Sings, Now He Sobs by Chick Corea. And particularly the first two, I heard them and was just like, whoa, that's what I want to do. Okay. And what's interesting for me...
And this was when? When was this?
Either 1997 or 98. It was like, it was either sophomore or junior year of school.
Okay. I see.
And that's like, I had been studying jazz theory. I mean, I bought books. I bought pedagogical stuff. I took lessons from a local professional, and then I studied with other local professionals later. So I was doing everything I could, and that, but it didn't. I was still thinking in terms of, I'm going to try to do both. Yeah. And then later in college, I felt like I needed to make a choice. Okay. Partly because even Eugene Rousseau, who I had studied with, he said,
What's his name?
Eugene Rousseau.
Rousseau. Okay. Okay.
And he had studied with Marcel Mule, who was really one of the first progenitors of classical saxophone. Okay. He and Sigurd Rascher. I mean, there are some figures before them maybe, but they're sort of the two major original stylists. Yeah. And so Rousseau had said, even I was interested in jazz, but I felt that if I wanted to be a world-class player on my instrument, I needed to choose one.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that you have to make that choice. I mean, for instance, Wynton Marsalis and Branford Marsalis both had, and Branford still does, engagements in classical music. They recorded classical albums. Yeah. Now, whether they are good or bad by classical standards, I'm not even saying. I'm just saying those were models for me as far as like people that were doing that. It's just because of those the differences in those worlds politically and stylistically. It's a hard thing to do. Yes. Yeah. But there are some amazing musicians now. Steve Lehman, Tyshawn Sorey, Travis Reuter, the guitarist, Corey Smythe, the pianist, maybe Vijay Iyer, who are able to operate in the kind of modern classical domain as well as improvised music. And also, for that matter, Keith Jarrett and Chick Corea did the same.
Would the key word be modern? In other words, do you think the real classical heads would value their music as classical music?
That's a good question.
Okay.
In a lot of cases, no.
Yeah, okay.
But in some cases, I've heard people say like, Chick Corea played Mozart and it was really good. It was actually really good.
I mean,
I'm not trying to be. I mean, like Chick is in the pantheon of jazz people.
Yeah, but playing the song. Any song can be played in any style. You know, like I'm not talking about Chick Corea. I'm just talking about in general.
Sure.
Yeah. If you get a Mozart piece and you can read music and you're a jazz musician, you can play it. Right.
It's cultivating. That's right. You can play it technically.
So, and
it's cultivating.
You're playing classical music.
The aesthetic of that music. You know, to like get into the history of it.
Yes.
Like if you play jazz for 25, 30, 40 years, you have that level of engagement with the music.
Yeah.
And classical requires the same. Like every music requires that level of depth and rigor and investigation.
Yes.
And so that's why it's so hard, I would say, to be both.
Yes.
And it's like it's a major compliment in a way if somebody who's a major classical pianist would say, "Oh, you know, Chick Corea sounds good," or sound like he really like that would to me be high praise because it's just like respecting the history and nuances of that music. Is like there's a whole, you know, it's what it's developed for 500 years or 300 years, whatever. I mean, it's been around, and so you just like to play that music is to engage with that history. Just like playing jazz is like to engage with that history. So that's kind of one reason why I was like, I think I want to develop now, as an improviser.
Having known you for a while now and having talked with you, you're like, for lack of a better word, you're like a walking encyclopedia of jazz.
Okay. I love it.
Jazz related.
I love it. I want to be. I want to be.
So, how important do you think? Like, do you? You're a fantastic saxophonist.
Thank you.
You're all
appreciate that.
But now, let's say there's somebody out there, John Smith out there. I don't know. John Smith is a real name. He's
plays, a Mormon.
who plays saxophone and he's okay. He can sit in, but you wouldn't want to have him on your record, you know. And he knows the history as much as you do. He's
kind of like a skilled semi-pro or semi-amateur.
Yes, but he knows the history like as much as you do. And he can maybe even school you on a few things about the history. How would you view that person? Would that change how you look at him in terms of... Would that change how you appreciate his musicianship?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, in fact, I kind of have had a history of playing with some people that are similar to this, or that are this description, what you're describing. And... I mean, I was introduced to certain music now that I love dearly. For instance, the music of Ornette Coleman. Okay. Through a good friend of mine who lives in Bloomington, Indiana, who never went to school for jazz trumpet. I mean, he studied jazz at like Abersold camps, or he studied jazz with maybe some private teachers. In some respect, and he studied trumpet because on the trumpet, just for people who don't know the trumpet is just a demanding bitch, and you have to There are 3 valves and then the truth. No, it's basically like when you have metal on your face and you're blowing air through this small hole in the mouthpiece. Yeah, it's actually imperative that you know how to do that in a way that doesn't damage you, like that doesn't cause scarring. Yeah, that doesn't cause your lips, like you're not pressing too much. I mean, this is a whole. There's a whole different schools of thought on this. I mean, there's like good friend of mine was a Laurie Frank student. There's there different famous trumpet teachers who have their approach. But my friend loved the music so much, and he is such an encyclopedic devotee of the music that he introduced me to a lot of music that I didn't know that now is like fundamentally a part of me. Wow. And it's interesting. It is interesting because
he's like an amateur, is he?
Well, I would call him like a semi-pro or a professional.
Is he a professional musician?
Not in terms of earning his living through music. Okay. I mean, he's a presenter of the music.
Oh, okay.
And I mean, this is. I was like, it's hard to which phrase to use to describe this person. Mm-hmm. But all that is to say that I think that somebody doesn't have to like make their living from the instrument if they have a large knowledge and a passion for the art, and they like. They spent a lot of time getting into the major figures and the history of it. I mean, I learned a lot from him, and I think you can learn a lot from that person. Yes. Okay. It's different than playing with somebody like if you played with I don't know. Dave Holland or Ray Brown or something like they were there when they made that music. So that's a different scenario that you learn something different from them, I guess. And you, likewise, playing with fellow professionals, you learn from everybody that you play with. Yes. So I think you learn things from, you can turn everything into an opportunity to learn, even what not to do, which is just as important as what to do in some cases. Yeah.
Now let's switch gears. Let's talk about your album because I really want to get it. Let's talk about your music in general. I really want to get it in there before we get lost.
Sure.
So you are recording. Let's talk about the last album, the latest. That's out. The one that's still making waves. It's called Individuation. Right?
Individuation.
I listened to a lot of it.
Cool.
I like Centrifuge. Yeah, because of it's
groovy.
Yeah, because
it's got like Daniel Ori who plays on that track. It's like, this has got a thing. It's good for radio.
I like it. Yeah, I like it. Yeah. Why is this is a random question? Your music is not on Spotify, is it?
It is actually not, and that's because of the record label. That's their decision. Yeah. I mean, it's a philosophical question. Okay. I could go either way on it. I don't use Spotify myself. Yeah. But the record label itself actually did not put the album on Spotify.
They didn't want it on Spotify.
I think that I don't think so. I mean, I think that they're certainly not opposed to whatever avenues it being part of. I think it was just they chose not to use Spotify itself for the reasons that its critics have stated. Now some people would say that
Destiny's Records.
Destiny Records. Yeah, I mean there are some people who would obviously disagree with that, and they would say, put it everywhere. I don't exactly remember why Destiny Records at this time does not use Spotify. I mean, I think it's just basically because it doesn't pay artists anything, and it doesn't offer them a chance to recoup on their investment. Yeah. But that wasn't up to me, I don't think.
Okay. Yeah. So can we talk about it? How many musicians? Four of you guys on the album?
On the album?
Yeah.
Well, the it's basically a quartet with different members switching in and out. Oh, okay. We had 2 different bass players, Daniel Ori and Scott Kohlberg. Oh, okay. And then on a few tracks we had the master musician, NEA jazz master, one of my all-time musical heroes, David Liebman on soprano and tenor saxophones.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, fundamentally, I think it was sort of like quintet music. Yeah, and I like to switch the configuration of instruments. For instance, another one of my heroes, Joe Henderson, put out a series of albums on Verve in the 90s where they would really play with instrumentation. Like there's one called Lush Life, which is the Billy Strayhorn tribute album, and sometimes he's playing.
Does it have Lush Life on it?
It does, yeah, which he plays solo, and then he does a track that's a duo with Christian McBride. He does a track that's duo with piano. He does or it's maybe it's piano, bass, and saxophone. He does quartet tracks. He does saxophone, bass, drums. He does quintet with Wynton Marsalis on trumpet. So I loved as a kid that there were so many moods and colors that he got just by playing with the instrumentation alone, and that's something that I carried into my concept was because it's so practical and it's so effective just by altering the basic parameters of the instrumentation, and basically what is this orchestration. Like if you're a composer and you say, okay, do I want the trombones to come in now, and are they in mutes, or I want trumpets with flutes, how does that sound? It's all orchestration, and it's how can we because the jazz quartet or quintet is really this little miniature orchestra in some ways. How can we use that format to get the most colors out of it? So I try to do quartet and quintet, and sometimes exploit the approaches between Liebman and me. Sometimes to have the quartet featured. Sometimes there's a duo track with me and Brad Whiteley doing a saxophone piano duo that's a ballad. Awesome. I think there's a pianoless track. Centrifuge actually I think is pianoless. So is it? I believe so.
Maybe I'm mistaking the one on the record and with the live one I saw. I like it on the record, but then I saw a live one.
We probably did use piano live.
Yeah. Whoever was playing was killing it.
Okay, cool. That might have been Brad Whiteley. Yeah, because totally an example of in the studio when you write something and you play it and then you go explore it live. I just wasn't using a trumpet player in my band, so it was okay, that stuff gets moved over to the piano, but it's also because it was a horn part, it's skeletal. It's I leave him to fill out certain details. I give him the part, the melody, or in this case it's a harmony, and then with other parts he's free to kind of fill in how he wants, although I think he's using his sense of taste and aesthetics to be okay, what does this tune sound like, and what am I going to do to fit that or not, and so when we did that tune on tour, we actually got into this minimalist Steve Reich kind of aesthetic, which was really satisfying because that tune lends itself to repetition over and over and over. And so Steve Reich's music gradually unfolds over time, and it's this slow kaleidoscopic change of stuff. And we were actually, we had talked about it. It was kind of understood, this is a thing we're going to do on this song. So it was somewhat premeditated, but that song really worked with that approach. And piano, because the piano just has so many options, so many notes, right? As a pianist, it's polyphony. So it took it in a different direction live than the studio, which I love actually. Live is really where you can really open up in some ways.
From if you ask me about the album, I know how I'm gonna describe the album.
Sure.
One word will be minimalist. One word.
I'm totally happy if you say that.
As somebody who appreciates jazz, I would totally appreciate the album, but as somebody who you're trying to convert to our religion of jazz,
that's true.
What would you tell the person about this album?
Well, I'm trying to do one way of looking at it was I'm trying to
somebody who knows music, who likes music but wants to be converted, is open.
It's a good question. Well, my music is very rhythmic, and I'm trying to bring in certain elements of world music, which I hate using that term. Let's say
everything is world.
Yeah, right. It's what does that mean? Nothing. It really means nothing.
I know.
Because there's
my music. They always put
it's a marketing term. It just means you're vaguely African or gamelan or something.
You're non-American.
You're non-American. Yeah, you're not. Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to bring in elements of world music.
Yeah.
And then also classical minimalism, like Steve Reich, John Adams, maybe Philip Glass to some extent, and have a really rhythmic music that try to helps me find my own voice. And extends certain parts of the modern jazz tradition, I guess.
This person doesn't know what modern jazz is. This person doesn't know what avant-garde is.
That's a hard one.
He just want to enjoy your music. So tell this guy.
How, like, what do I say to get him in?
Yeah, that's. I'm asking you because first of all, you're the first jazz musician I'm having on this podcast, and I'm really excited about it. At the same time, I want to challenge us as jazz musicians. I mean, some people wouldn't even consider me jazz musician. So I want to challenge the jazz musicians.
Okay.
Because I believe, it's not even I know. Jazz is like one of, I can use the word best forms, genres of music.
It's certainly, I think, one of the most complex.
It's complex, but I feel like we underestimate the audience. You know.
Say that again. We underestimate the audience.
Yeah, I feel like they can't understand. They can't get into this avant-garde shit, or they can't get into this. Or like, for instance, to a lot of the old people who listen to jazz, once it's not swing, it's no longer jazz to them.
Right.
And I feel
which I don't agree with.
Yeah, I feel like it's our...
Because that's sort of a reductionist way of like, you're reducing it to ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, exactly.
Which swing is amazing and infinite. Like, I will always love swinging. Yeah. And it's like this thing that's ever new. It's always, it's always, there's more to be done. Yeah. But I don't personally agree with that at all to say that it must swing. Yeah. Like, that's like an old argument from a long, but I agree with you. Like, there are some people who would say, hey, if it's not swinging, I'm not into it.
Yeah. So that's the thing. I just feel like it's our job to let people know that this could be mainstream. This is music. This is educative. This can be poignant. This can be everything. So
it's got the spectrum of emotions.
And from my own school of thought, I really love the history of jazz. I really admire your intense knowledge about it.
Well, there's just so many wonderful, amazing figures, and also it's that informing your music, like the more that you know. I mean, this is just my philosophy. I mean, I was really influenced by Branford Marsalis in that respect. Who I'm saying know the whole thing if you can. I mean the whole thing. I mean where there's no end to it. Yeah. But like know as much as you can to be as literate as you can. Yeah. And then try to go either beyond or try to do your thing with it. Yeah.
But do you think that at the end that we are just performers, like jazz musicians are just performers, and a performer is somebody who gives you something at the time somebody who provide instant gratification. That's what I feel like. It's a performer, like
you're getting something as an audience member from listening.
Yes, just I'm gonna come and listen to you. Give me something. I don't need to know the history.
Right.
To get your stuff.
Yeah, this is a whole
I don't need to
philosophical
study
thing.
a textbook to get your stuff. I want to get it.
Yeah, this is a big whole philosophical debate and this versions of this have gone on in the jazz world for decades. Yeah. Especially as it's sort of become like transferred to the academy in terms of the way that we learn it. Yeah. Going to school, and it becomes more complex. Yeah. I would say from my point of view that I think anything that has a long lifespan just becomes more complex over time because there's just more stuff. But for my music, where the angle I would take on this is I try to have it be intensely rhythmic and intense. I mean, like I'm from the kind of John Coltrane school of even if they don't know, or even free jazz, it's like, even if you don't know the theory, you feel it. And I also think that rhythm communicates, like, and some, I think rhythm is very near the heart of jazz in general. I mean, I'm not going to say, because there's a lot of different, I mean, you could play something that's not in time at all, and I would still call it jazz. Like there are types of free jazz, obviously, that I would call jazz that don't have a regular beat.
Yeah.
And at the time, they were socially, I think they were considered more radical because they were throwing down the gauntlet to that tradition and saying we're doing something new and we're extending this, and it was particularly the 60s with like the civil rights era of the United States, and also there's all the upheaval and all the I'll call it radicalism in culture. That music had a resonance then along those lines. But I think there are things people can get musically that from the rhythm and from the intensity, and also even like, you know, you're going to see an artist. I mean, I'll call myself an artist. That's what I am. It's like I just don't want to sound like I'm an artist, but I am. So and you know, so are you. So like you're going to see that person do their thing, and so you're getting, hopefully at its best, you're getting some kind of special experience from that. And my music happens to be somewhat melodic, at least at this stage. I mean, there's a lot of music that I think that's very contemporary that would not be at all in comparison to mine. And so like I still have some melodies, however oblique they may be, or maybe people listening would be like, I don't hear that as a melody. I hear it as a melody. But I think also the last thing I would say is the communication between band members, and maybe this sounds like a cliche, but at its best, it really is like my new record's going to be called Dialogical. It really is a series of ongoing dialogues or trialogues or whatever you want to call it. Like that there's a thing about human beings being in the room in front of you doing that at a high level that has an energy that's just, you're not going to get it from a machine in the same way. Of course, and I think that's what jazz at its best really it represents, is this sort of high level of social order, is what I'm going to call it, where the individual and the collective flow into each other, in and out, and then and at any given moment, one can become the other, and there's like that's a very sophisticated form of political and social order, and it's also like the sum being more than the sum being more than a total of its parts, where a really good band will have a thing that they bring, and that's what I'm actually trying to reach with my group. And I think that you can't get there unless you just play with the same people for a long time. So you know, you have your Miles Davis quintet, your John Coltrane quartet, you have your Keith Jarrett trio, like you have, or whoever, or Ornette Coleman's classic quartet with you know, John Cherry and Charlie Hayden, Billy Higgins, or whatever. And that's what I'm trying to get to with my thing. But I think there are certain things that people will pick up just from the attitude and intention of the players. And that's going to communicate itself. That's the best answer I can give to this. I think
we're going to keep talking about this for a while.
Sure.
You just talked about the communication between the musicians on stage. Have you do you think jazz musicians ignore the communication between the artists on stage, and no matter how tacit it is, communication between the artists, or even it doesn't have to be tacit, between the artists and the audience? Because, for instance, vocalists do that well. I mean, they have the voice, you know. Okay. Someone like Dee Bridgewater, when she performs, I feel like her music is jazz, but at the same time, if you're not a jazz, if you're not into jazz, she could actually convert you.
Okay.
You know. But sometimes I feel like instrumentalists, we forget that, hey, we can still talk, or we can still get people to even hum to what we're playing, you know. So that's one question. Another question is this. Sorry, this is two prongs question, but it's so related. So
throwing down the gauntlet.
Yeah, I just have to, because I got you here. So is catchy an element that
like a hook.
Yeah. Do you think? Do you ever go for catchy?
Which one do you want me to answer first? Either one or
either one. Yeah, let's start with catchy, then go back to communicating with the audience.
Well, catchy is like a melodic hook that would be part of a song that's like a recognizable melody.
Yes.
It depends on, for me, what kind of tune I'm trying to write.
Okay.
There are melodies that I write which I think have catchy moments. Like for instance, on Individuation, the first track is called Interior Designs.
Okay.
And there's a melody that goes ba bo ba 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 bo ba 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 bo ba. I think that's catchy.
Okay.
To me.
Okay. Yeah.
I understand where other people will be like, I don't hear it at all. But I hear that as, I do think, I'll put it this way. I'm interested in writing strong melodies that would be memorable.
Okay.
So
that's what I go for.
Like, I mean, there are some jazz artists who are supremely catchy, like Cannonball Adderley or Eddie Harris come to mind as saxophonists.
Sonny Rollins.
Sonny Rollins, of course, writing all sorts of little themes that are standard forms that are brilliant, like St. Thomas or Doxy or whatever. Yeah. My thing is right now what I'm trying to do is a little bit more longer form compositions. Okay. But on the other hand, now that I say that, sometimes when I try to write free bop tunes, which is like, let's call that sort of in the style of Ornette Coleman, like I happen to love Ornette and Thelonious Monk are two of my favorite jazz composers. And I would love to thoroughly study their music and assimilate it and be able to write like that in my own way. And they have catchy melodies for sure. Like to me, Thelonious Monk is incredibly intensely melodic and catchy. Yeah. And Ornette Coleman is too. So when I try to write stuff like that, there is a catchiness to it. There probably, I don't know if there's a hook per se, but there's something that the listener probably could walk away and hum. Yeah, yeah. And then as far as you were talking about engaging the audience as an instrumentalist. One of the advantages that vocalists have is simply they're talking through language that everybody speaks, which already adds like vocalists are just more accessible, period, because of that. I think what I try to do as an instrumentalist is, like you said, like talk to the audience, tell them what tunes are about. Some performers can use body language really effectively. Like I've watched Josh Redman on videos, and he looks like he's slamming. And he has certain he'll move his body, he'll cut off notes by lifting the horn, he'll do quick little gestures. Also, I think humor. Not that I'm funny, but humor is. I think humor is an amazing thing that could actually get people over where if you can get them to laugh, they're like, hey, this guy isn't so bad after all. Maybe he's kind of a nerd, but I mean, I think that with artists, as we're doing kind of a more abstract thing. So one thing we could do is to play like catchier material, like you said, or something that has a rhythmic gesture or a rhythm that's catchy or whatever. But we can just try to present ourselves in an audience-friendly way and talk to people and try to... I mean, I do think about that. I also think about set list and set order and how to present my music in a way that will be the most effective. And, I mean, that's just something you do anyway. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure to people who don't listen to jazz, like it probably sounds like some sort of code or gibberish even. So that's where it's hard as an instrumentalist, because I think it takes that extra step of exposure and immersion. Like you've played piano, so you can understand. You're like, oh man, I get what she's doing. Like that's really tough. Yeah. And it's hard to or that's really like creative, or I would never have thought of that. Like I think sometimes that context has to be there. But I think it all comes down. Obviously, it comes down to the artist. There are people like Cannonball Adderley, who was a very successful communicator with audiences. Okay. I mean, I have some. I have this one recording he does in 1960 in France, and he's talking about this tune Janine, which is like this hard swinging tune. Yeah. and like speaking of hooks, it's like bop bop
Yeah.
bop 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 ba ba da bop bop ba do ba bop bop ba ba da, right? And so he says he's like, you'd think a tune called Janine would be like weepy and sensitive, etc. I mean, he's like saying it's named after a woman, so you would think it would have these stereotypical female, feminine, like cliche stereotypical feminine traits. And he's like, so Janine is a swinging chick, and the audience says nothing. And what I love so much happens next. He goes, I wish I could speak French, but there it is. And it's just a great moment of him like laughing at himself, kind of. Yeah. But he's so at ease, and he was a great communicator.
See, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So now, do you think...
And that's a personality, that's a thing.
It's a personality. But what I'm getting to is that this is my analysis. I feel like to be a good jazz musician, a good jazz instrumentalist especially, you really have to spend your time studying your craft.
Oh yeah,
you really have to study.
There's no way you can't.
But I feel like in that quest to master that instrument or that craft or the music, we kind of forget that at the end we need people, and that people respond to this kind of this personality, this histrionics that could be made up,
The show. Yeah.
A show. People respond to a show.
The theater. Theatrical.
Yeah. So that's the thing. Like when people say jazz is dead, I always say jazz is not dead. But maybe the art form is not dead. The art form, the performance, the level of showmanship that other forms of music have, jazz musicians don't care about it, because
I think that's fair.
Yeah, because like even you see some saxophonists who play for pop artists, when they take their solo, the attitude they have on stage is totally different from the kind of attitude I see amongst certain jazz musicians. And when I see some jazz, some maybe a quartet playing, sometimes somebody's soloing, you see the other people in the band are just like, okay, let's wait for him to finish.
Miles Davis always said, he's like, he left the stage because he's like, what am I supposed to do? Just stand there and like look pretty, well, this is, I mean, can I be real? I mean, I come down more on the art side of the fence. One of my good friends, John Crowley, tries to do like a alt rock jazz thing because he's trying to bring jazz to the people in that way, and he feels strongly that we need to be engaging with the audience in terms of relevant contemporary music. I think that's totally valid. Or people like Robert Glasper. Like that's totally valid. I have I mean, even like Kamasi Washington is drawing people into some that like basically improvised music, like funky jazz based music. I've lost my train of thought. We're talking about like the art and the presentation. I think jazz, like, here's what I'm going to say. Jazz comes from the 19th century. Here's Michael Eaton's theory, not what I've read in the book. Okay. Jazz is a product of like jazz is more comparable to classical music. Yeah. Like go imagine a time when there was radio was new. There was no TV. Yeah. And there were people had pianos in a drawing room or a salon in their homes. Everybody played music like they were more musically like, we just sing and we play piano and we play fiddle and all this stuff. My thesis here is that I think the model of musicianship and artistry comes more from that classical or even late 19th century model, where it's like it's less theatrical in terms of the way that the performer visually presents himself, and it's more about the music itself. And I don't mean to be insulting in that way. I think
that's very interesting though.
With the rise, go ahead.
Because I
think it was a less visual
way. I see that element in what you're saying, because jazz
Even though like Liszt was a rock star, there were other classical artists who were rock stars at their time.
It comes from that classical tradition too. But seriously, as an African, I see it differently.
Okay,
because I hear a lot of like swing to me. It's like
dance music.
Yeah, it's like a switched up African polyrhythm.
Okay.
To me.
Okay.
You know, that's what
and that music was originally like a largely dance.
Yeah, like
pop music.
So that's what I hear. And even going back to looking at even what's this at Tatum, for instance, when he played, he's blind. And all he does is play the piano. I still see performance. I still see him performing. Like I still feel him, you know? And I see what you're saying. That classical tradition is there of, let's digest this music. But at the same time, now what I feel like what makes it jazz is that that level of accessibility it has than the classical music. And I feel like why it has that level of accessibility is because it has that potential of bringing in the audience in whatever way. You know, be it with a vocalist like Betty Carter, you know, or with somebody like Tatum, or with. But you're right. You're totally right.
I'm listening.
But I just feel like it's not absolute. It's not absolutely because it comes from that classical tradition. Yes, it has a classical tradition, but somebody who is coming from another tradition, like somebody who is coming from the church, or somebody who played blues, sees it a different way. As an African who all our music we want it turned up, I see it in a different,
that's interesting.
A
that's
different way. And as an African, I see a lot of African music in jazz, you know? And that's what gravitates me. That what pulls me towards jazz, and I look for certain things in it. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, what I'm also meaning by this is I think that pop and rock music and everything that let's say everything that followed rock like has become an increasingly visual performance, especially after MTV rise. So what Mike Eaton is saying, and again I don't know, this is my opinion, is that it has become a more visual spectacle, and the model that we're looking at now as the norm is more the pop musician model, which does have that visual theatrical component. I mean, I also think like looking sharp and looking good is great. Like we can like there's an element of like the way we present ourselves aesthetically with what we wear. I mean, that's what you're saying is absolutely one of the criticisms of jazz, modern jazz. And in some ways it could even go back to it really goes back to the beboppers like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, although Dizzy was intensely like Dizzy was like the clown prince. Like he was a joker and a joker figure, and he definitely communicated with audiences in like a conventional, like an entertainer way. Where I think like Charlie Parker was just so profound that people were like, whoa, what's going on? But he had more of like the art music vibe where he said, I play bebop, I don't play jazz. Now later he went back on that. But I think that's really where the bebop era is really, and also they were like, we are great black artists and we want to be taken seriously as artists. And so now it split into different schools, because like Max Roach was there, and Max Roach like I think has visual aspects to his presentation. He probably has an engaging, just like some people like just to watch them play drums is like really entertaining or really interesting. And I think that those players of that generation probably had that balance that you're looking for, which is like they had some kind of entertainment aspect visually, and then they had some kind of deep artistic content musically. And I mean I think that's something to strive for. I mean I come down obviously more on the, very much on like the art music side of the fence, as I've told you before. I'm always trying to think about, or I'm often trying to think about, how can I present myself in a way that's going to draw people in. I mean, in the case of John Coltrane, he didn't say anything, but they were so enormously powerful that there was like, it was a vortex. There's no way you're not going to get swept in. And that's actually kind of my model is that like, well, you may not even know what you're in for, but you're gonna get pulled in. I see. I mean, that's an approach. It's a kind of a. It's maybe it's skirting the. It's skirting a little bit the what you're referring to as far as like being like, hey, how you doing? But it also has like the power of the music.
No,
communicates.
Like I see what I. Let me explain what I mean.
Sure.
The person doesn't even have the performer doesn't even have to say a word.
Okay.
During the rehearsal, did you plan to do that? Did you plan to really bring the audience in by not speaking? Have you really orchestrated this, putting the audience in mind, or did you just rehearse your stuff and you're coming to play to the audience? You know, that's what I don't agree with. I don't agree with just go rehearsing and being satisfied with it and then going out there and playing without knowing, without putting the audience into consideration. Like I went to see an Esperanza Spalding's concert, her Chambers Music Society, when she was touring for it. This was in Pittsburgh. Yeah. She didn't say a word. You know, but the audience, of course, she had like a huge Chambers, a group of
she's also got a kind of marketing machine behind her. I'm also
she has a marketing machine behind her. She has novelty behind her, you know, but it was well orchestrated that
and she's super outgoing. I mean, like I think as a personality, she's a natural communicator. I think like that's obviously strength
that was for that album. She didn't say anything. But still, she captured the audience. She captivated the audience. Sometimes, when I go to see some jazz musicians, the music is good. I enjoy it because I like jazz. But at the same time, I feel like if somebody just comes in who is not used to that kind of sound, the person might find it fascinating for the first 5 minutes. Then after,
I wish
5 minutes after that, the person might be like, okay, this is not for me, you know. But let's talk about your upcoming album. You have the great Lionel Richie. That's what I just want to highlight on that. That he's going to be playing with you. How did that happen? How did that come about?
Well, that's a good question. I used to play with this great drummer named George Mel, which is short for Melikashvili. He's from the Republic of Georgia. He's actually back there now, but he lived in New York for quite a while. Like 15 years or so, I think. And he had a trio with Lionel that goes back to Berkeley, the Berkeley School of Music. And so I played in George's quartet for 2 or 3 years, and I did a lot of sessions with him when I moved to New York. He was somebody that I played with a lot, and I met a lot of people through him and also through jam sessions on the Brooklyn scene. But there was an occasion, one of George's birthdays, he arranged a session at his house, and Lionel was one of the people that was invited. I got to play with him for the first time, which was really cool. I had first heard Lionel Richie at the 2006 Indianapolis Jazz Festival when I was still living in Indiana. And I think I've told you this story. He was playing with Herbie Hancock. It was Herbie Hancock, Matthew Garrison, Richie Barchet, and him. And I just knew within the first like 30 seconds. I was like, oh, this guy has the thing. And like, actually this relates to what we were just talking a second ago. Some people have this magnetism or charisma, whatever you want to call it. But I when I heard Lionel, I was like, he has the Miles thing. And I've heard Wayne Shorter do it too, where I saw Wayne Shorter in Kansas City once with a quartet, and he played one note, and we're like, whoa, you know, like it's just like, and Lionel, when I first heard him, I had that vibe was there, and I was like, wow, okay, this guy is it. He's got it, like whatever that it is. I don't really believe there's a one it, but I was just like, this cat has it. Whatever it is, he's got it. And so playing with him at 10 year not 10, I don't know, 6 years later.
Yeah.
It was cool. And then I basically contacted him privately over Facebook, and I said, hey, you remember me? Here's a video of a performance I did. I would love to have you on my record if you're interested, and we can talk further. And then he responded, and we got my label involved, and we went from there.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
that's
no, very, very, very
nice.
cool. Very
that's
cool.
I'm waiting for. I can't wait for the outcome of that.
Yeah, I mean,
he's gonna play on all the songs.
He plays on like approximately half the album. He plays on 4 songs.
Wow.
And one of them, actually 2 of them, I'm sorry, he sang.
He sang,
which was
in what language?
How do I do it? It's basically scatting.
Oh, okay.
But in a way that reflected his African heritage.
Yeah.
Which here was the thing about that. I think he learned all the music by ear, and I talked to him during the session because he came in and he played.
He learned your music by ear.
Yeah, he requested that I send
the recorded.
I sent like MP3s of the ensemble that I use. I made for a computer program that I have for Alley, and then he said, "Can you send me guitar with click track? Just the guitar part with click track?" Okay, and I sent that. And when he got to the session, I think he, in some ways, played the music better than we did, and I was like, "Oh, he learned it by ear. That's the only way." And so I asked him during a break between takes. I was like, "Man, did you learn by ear everything? Like when you were little?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I learned everything by ear, and then I learned the chart." And so later, I think he was enjoying himself. I hope he was. And then we get to like 7:00, and he says, "Oh, I've got to sing some tunes. You were talking about having me possibly sing." I was like, "Yeah, let's sing some tunes."
Wow.
So he goes in the booth and proceeds. So he said, "I'm going to overdub twice. Like I'm going to do 2 different vocal tracks on the same song to get this phasing effect. That's going to be cool." But the thing was, when he started singing,
like he was into
my melody,
just,
and when he started singing, everyone in the control room went. We all were like astonished, I'm getting goosebumps now. Like we all were like, "What's going on?" Because he nailed all my melodies, which are like complicated, and like first take or second take, and it was like this guy has internalized everything, and that was like a moment where people misuse this word, but you're like humbled, where you're like, "Oh man, this is a master." And then I think my drummer especially was like, "Man, you've got to be." I think he was like, "Holy smokes, this guy is like on another level." And that was really special because I had written some of that music, hearing him in my mind's eye singing. I had written it for him to actually sing, and it was one of the first times in my career where I had written something for an artist to sing, and they sang it, and it was it was basically like what I heard in my head, or even better. And so I think those vocal tracks are actually some of the best tracks on the album, which is strange for me because, you know, I'm an instrumentalist, like we were talking about. I'm the prototypical jazz instrumentalist. And it's very instrumental and instrument heavy. But you have this guy that's singing, and all of a sudden, you as a listener, I go, "Whoa, that's really interesting."
That's awesome.
So So
it was, you sent him like the finale thing could spit out MP3.
Yeah, you can use the program where you write in all the music, click in all the music with a mouse or whatever, or a keyboard, and then you can save it as a file.
Oh, okay.
And you know that's what he wanted. He wanted the guitar track so that he could listen with a click.
Okay, the guitar track as a sound.
Exactly. Like it plays the guitar.
Okay.
It plays the track for him. And with the click, he knows where everything is rhythmically, and so he learned it that way.
Oh, that's good.
Which is
that's really good.
Nice. Like that. That's a profound level of oral mastery.
Yeah. You got to do that. Wow. When do you think the album is coming out?
They were shooting for an early 2017 release. Okay, so cool. I definitely want, if I can get my way. Oh, okay. I definitely want it to come out early next year. I mean, one of the things that I was told about the CD business or radio is that during the holiday season, where like Christmas music in the U.S. starts to get played, basically for like 3 to 4 weeks they just shut down their normal schedule and it goes to holiday stuff all the time. And my last album came out, I think, in October of 2014. So we kind of missed a little bit of promotional opportunity because that was that window of holiday stuff. Okay. So what we're trying to do is avoid that. And then
was this? What time was that? October? What time?
October of the beginning of October 2014. Okay. Yeah, okay. I think. So, because there's like, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. We were in fourth quarter.
Okay.
And that's kind of like just an issue that the fourth quarter has. Yeah. So this album, when we try to get it out at the beginning of the year and have a nice buzz behind it. I mean, like for listeners, when you do an album, you've got to get pretty much a publicist. Yeah. A radio campaign, which may be handled, which may be handled by either the same person or different people. In my case, it was different people. Yeah. And you're trying, you're just trying to get magazines and blogs and jazz sites, whatever, to review you. Yeah. And of course, having a well-known person is one way to facilitate that. Of course, because in a way, it's good because it contextualizes your music as like, oh, well, this person is in this tradition, or they play this because they associate with this person. It's cultural signifiers. It's social capital. Yeah, it's all those things.
Definitely, and it helps you in other ways that you don't even think of, like when they Google the person's name, they'll say related artists, and when iTunes recommends, when somebody's listening to maybe Lioness music,
that's iTunes a great point, which I hadn't even thought of. Yeah.
So let's do two things quickly. I want to ask you, have you ever thought about using your music to affect social change in any way? However, no matter how small it is, no matter how minute, or no matter how indirect.
Yes, indirect is a good word. Yeah. Well, my first album is called Individuation, and that relates to Carl Jung's philosophy, and really, in some ways, I was thinking about all the different stages of individuation, but just the concept of individuation, kind of, it can have some political or philosophical. It's certainly a philosophical meaning and import. The next album will be dialogical, which to some extent is inspired by dialogue and theories of dialogism. I don't know. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. There's a couple people, Mikhail Bakhtin, who's this really brilliant Russian literary and discourse theorist from the 20th century, and then also there's a theory of the dialogical self, which is a psychological approach to basically saying that what the Western self had been conceived has for a long time been conceived as one unified self is actually not. It's a multiplicity or a polyphony of voices, and they're all situated in space, and so like. It's all the different parts of yourself that has a worldview embedded there, and it has a philosophical meaning. I mean, I have a definite set of politics and a worldview there. I think for my album titles this time, what I do is I put my philosophical interests in terms of my album titles and my tune titles. Nice. So, for instance, I have a tune on this album called Anthropocene via Social Ecology. We'll probably just call it Anthropocene. Yeah. And even the word Anthropocene is I'm just gonna take it there. Even Anthropocene, it can be problematic because it's the idea that we're in this new stage of environmental and geological a new epic. Yeah. Sorry, because I'm not
entropy scene. Entropy then scene.
Oh, anthropos, as in the human principle.
Oh, it's anthropos. Okay.
I'm gonna garble the scientific terminology, so I apologize in advance to people. Okay. But it's the idea that like we've the Earth has gone through different various epochs of time that were characterized by a certain environmental conditions and species that and that we are in one now that's defined by humanity's activities, fundamentally different, which is different than any other epoch. And basically half or more of the species are going to die, and the temperature is going to raise. Like everything we're doing. So one argument you could have is that's not just an outcome of humans. It's an outcome of the Industrial Revolution, and I would say capitalism. So one argument would be, do you call it Capitalocene, which is a really awkward word, or do you call it Anthropocene? Because it's not just like, just because human beings are here doesn't mean we have to destroy the planet or even change it on that scale, but we have. I mean, I'm not even interested in debating that. Like I'm, as far as I'm concerned, it's a fact we have, and it's happening, and we're seeing it happen now. But the social ecology part is sorry if this is all weird. No. The social ecology part is comes from a kind of I'm going to call him post-anarchist, post-Marxist thinker named Murray Bookchin. And social ecology is his philosophy of how are we going to deal? It's basically like thinking about the relationship of nature and humanity, and conceiving of it in a dialectical fashion where they both interact with each other. I mean, Bookchin is sort of thinking about I think like decentralized communities, and his thesis would be that basically social domination, social hierarchy produced. Sorry if this may not be totally accurate, but it produced the way that we interact with the environment, so that this sort of domination of, there's a lot, in philosophy and science, there's a long century of people talking about like Cartesian dualism and also like using, like instrumentalizing or objectifying the world. Feminists have added a lot to that discussion, but Bookchin is saying like the way that we think about the earth or nature in relation to human beings is very important, and sort of the reflexive way they operate on each other, and that we've got to structure our social system in harmony with that. I'm just going to simplify it and say that, but I mean he goes to very painstaking detail about how to philosophically think about it and why certain ways of thinking about it are inaccurate or don't work, and basically I think just the idea of, I think there's a lot of truth to what he's saying, obviously, of like the way that we structure our civilizations in relationship to the needs of the natural world is obviously going to be of incredible importance in the next century. And so like that's all there. I don't talk about it. I call it the title. And there's I'm trying to think of another one, but that's an idea. That's great. Because to me that's the issue. One of the issues is like, Rosa Luxemburg said socialism or barbarism, but like eco-socialism or ecological, the ecology in relation to production, because we live in a industrial society, and so many things are hyper integrated in a globalized society, like you're talking about on your record, and you can't just turn this switch off. Not in my opinion. I mean, not in my view. Like a socialist perspective would stress, like industrial production is an advance over previous modes of production, and it's done a lot of great things. It's also produced a lot of like environmental destruction, which is the shadow of that. But what I would say is we need to keep all the technology and industry in terms of like the technology we've developed. We don't want to go backwards, but by the same time, it has to be used rationally. And also we have to understand what the ecosystem can sustain and withstand, and then like do everything we can to move in that direction. I mean, obviously there may be some implicit like Western bias in what I'm saying, but I mean like that's because some people like deep green anarchists might say we got to go back to like living off the land, and I'm sorry if I'm mischaracterizing their position, but there's an element there of like the earth at all costs, and what that would do is kill off like 97% of the earth's population, and for an eco-socialist position that would be unacceptable, because like that's just like, well, that's you just destroyed the planet to save it. Like why would you, like the idea is to maintain or keep what we've fought and struggled for, but also to use it in a way that's can be environmentally consistent.
Wow, nice. This is deep.
We just went there.
The shallow mind.
Wow. That's funny. My dad was like, deep subject for a shallow mind.
Now let's switch gears. Let's make it fun a little bit.
We're all gonna die, but it's gonna be 60 to 80 years tops.
Yeah. So I have this little segment of the podcast I call "Turn Up or Mute."
Okay.
Turn it up or you mute it. All right. Okay. If you like it, you turn it up. If you don't care, you mute it. Okay. Kenny G.
Mute.
Okay. All right. That's okay. Big band.
Turn it up.
Turn up. Okay.
Turn it up.
I would say, I don't know where I stand. Okay. But guess what? This is totally contradictory. One of my dreams is to record with a big band.
Sure. No, it's awesome. It's like a Corvette behind you. It's it's a power.
Yeah.
There's an American thing like a culture that was industrialized in the 1950s. And you got factory workers, they're producing these big cars and rockets and stuff. Like the big band has this power and throb and like just it's like a machine or an engine that's so powerful behind you. So I mean like look at Sinatra with Basie at the Sands or whatever, or stuff like that, or Ella with Duke Ellington. Like totally, it would be a singer's dream, especially if you've got a great band behind you where they're just like setting you in the best possible context. It's awesome. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How about Kansas City? Kansas
Mute.
City.
Mute. Mute.
I know you're gonna say that. All right.
We'll make it.
Is there a rivalry between?
I think so.
Between the two
a little
cities?
bit. I think so. A little bit.
Interesting. Okay. How about Kanye West?
I'll turn it up.
Why?
I mean, I'm not the guy to ask on this, but I mean, I think he does cool stuff within his idiom.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not talking about the personality. I'm just talking about the music.
Okay.
What I've heard that I like, I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Okay. All right. How about math?
If it had been 10 years ago, I would have said mute.
Yeah.
But now turn it up.
Turn up. Okay.
Because the more that you get into...
Are you trying to please me?
No. Well, yes. No. The more that I just bought this book. Yeah. It was like... It's published by, I think, Dover, but it's like basically like mathematics for the layperson or whatever.
Dover. What's the title of the book? I probably have it somewhere in my office.
I don't. This is the thing, I don't remember. It's like it's designed for a college course where it's like teaching non-mathematicians
history. Maybe it's the history of math or something like that.
I think you probably know this book. Yeah,
okay. I have a bunch of Dover books because they're like $2. Some of them like $3.
Well,
I just buy a bunch of math Dover books.
Totally. And I mean, I've been for a long time been a science enthusiast, but I'm not like deep, but as you get deeper into like politics and philosophy and economics, then like the use, obviously, I mean, this is such a simple, stupid, like it's good to know math. And like, I don't know that stuff. And I mean, I took basic math in school, but it's just like something where I'm like, okay, step at a time, put a toe in. Now you're into your ankle. Good. You can do this. Okay. Your shin deep. Get careful. There's the knee.
That's
okay, we're good. We're good.
That's
at the
how
knee.
it is for 90% of the population. So
well, I think that it's probably like all how you teach it, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you got to go step by step.
And also now I'm like, man, if I had just studied this stuff like I studied music, I'd be great at math because it's like understanding the fundamental.
True.
I mean, I'm saying this from a position of ignorance, but like I've realized after the fact that I'm like, oh, it's how deeply you grasp this fundamental concept in these relationships and like, oh, can you plot this thing on an XY graph, or can you state this thing in just like the shape in space?
Just the discipline. Like for me, music has helped me with math. Just like math has helped me with music, but more so music, because like when you get on the piano, for me as somebody who plays the piano, I don't know if I should call myself a pianist because somebody who plays the piano.
You're a pianist.
When I try to play melodies, sometimes like I come up with all this my weird melodies with different hits on the time, and it takes me I try to play it on the piano and I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm not messing with this because I can't like play it as smoothly as I want to play it.
Yeah.
Then the discipline of having learned math for like 10 years.
Okay.
After after high school, to be able to get a PhD, that discipline kicks into me. I'm like, okay, now settle down.
Yeah.
And try to get this. And then when I do math, I think of how long it took me to get some melodies down. And then I'm like, okay, now settle down, keep doing it and doing it, repeat it and do it. So.
And math also is logic, right? It's logical relationships.
Yes.
And I sometimes, like, people will say, people will share like some meme on Facebook where they're like, I learned how to do all this stuff in high school, but I never learned how to fill out a tax form or whatever. And so they're like arguing for like utilitarianism.
They don't know what math is.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm like, no, you're actually learning a bunch of stuff that's really important.
Yeah.
And one of them is logic. And problem solving, and kind of ways of more or less objectively quantifying phenomena that, like, that's part of being an educated person's quote unquote. I'm going to make that argument. Yeah. And so, like, I'm sort of deficient in that area, and it's something I'd like to be better at. It's going to take me a while, but eventually, I've bought some books, and
good. Just don't try to like know everything. Just enjoy it. Yeah. Just enjoy it. Well, and sometimes reading math could, like, I have some math textbooks that when I start to read them, I can only maybe read 3 pages in 1 hour.
Okay. And that's enough.
Yeah, that's enough for the day. Like, my brain hurts now, so I'm good.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. When I was a junior in high school, I had the very distinct sensation every day. This never happened in any other class or grade level quite the same way, or maybe it was just the first time, but we would have 50-minute class periods, and I would get done with it, and my brain would be fried at that subject. Like, I felt like this physical sense in my brain of like, I can't think about that anymore. And math was definitely one of those subjects. You're right. It's like it's like paying attention to music also.
Yeah.
True. My friend John Curley and I have talked about how I would probably agree with him on this, that really the mind is probably going to absorb about 45 to 50 minutes of music, and then you're good, and you got to take a break. And I think that's right. I'm just drawing that parallel to math, because you've got a certain span of attention, and then you need to get up and not do it for a while and take a break, or let your mind be open or whatever, or think about other things. And that's a very important part of the learning process, is the actually non-doing.
Yep. Oh, we could talk all day.
Keep talking about math all day.
Definitely, we should be able to, we should do this again.
Let's do it.
Definitely, yeah. So
I'll give my dissertation on jazz history circa 1955 to 1970.
Good. That'd be awesome. Seriously, I really enjoy.
You can talk about Euclid.
I could throw in some Euclid in
or
there.
Ptolemy or somebody.
Any day.
Archimedes.
Cartesian.
Woo! Yeah.
Descartes. Yeah.
Please tell me about that. I want to know about that stuff.
All right. So, but quickly, I just want to thank you for playing in my album.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Great. Did you listen? Have you listened to it?
I listened to all of it.
Oh, really?
I've at least listened to I've listened to all the tracks that I'm on, and I've listened to some.